So in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to use PostTrans to bring in a CSV file. Possibly I would imagine it coming from an external system. Maybe you've already brought in an invoice from an external system and now you're bringing in the payment. Maybe it's a PayPal payment or a Google Pay or some kind of credit card transaction maybe. And you want it to match off against the invoice within Sage 200. That's the scenario. Now, just before I start, I do like to keep these videos brisk, so press spacebar to pause and arrow left on your keyboard to rewind a few seconds if you want to review part of it again. Here we are on a template. This comes with PostTrans. If I'm on the PostTrans toolbar, I can press help, and if I type in here receipt, you'll see there's an option here, and double click on that, and that'll open this example here. So let's just talk about the structure of the template itself. Well, I did actually do a video on manual allocation. I did go over a little bit of this. So in the header fields here, we can set up various kind of preferences for how we're going to process and what we're going to do. Firstly, in cell D3, I can set up here a whole series of currencies and bank accounts I'm going to use. So basically we list the currency followed by the bank account number. So I'm setting here that GBP will be bank account 1, euros 2, US dollars 3, and therefore PostTrans, as you'll see in a minute, will extract the debtors list and then process that debtors list. And this allows us just to filter down into individual currencies and bank accounts to process. The next option further down is match by. Now in the other video we have that set to manual because what we do is we extract the whole debtors list and simply type in figures. But this is going to work differently. Let's just press space and tab away, and PostTrans in cell searching will show all the options. So one option, the first option is value. So what it's going to do is it's going to take the values of the spreadsheet and say, okay, let's find it in the debtors list. So I could allocate against the oldest matching value on the account. So £100, look for the oldest value for that account. I'd obviously have to list the account code here, which we can easily add from the tags menu up here. Just double click and pop it in. And that would then bring in the receipt and then match off, allocate it against the invoice. Or maybe I'm bringing in a unique reference and putting it in my invoice reference field or the reference to field if it's unique. If it's unique to the account, I can actually hone again down on the account code. Or I may have defined a user-defined field within Sage 200, in which case I'd select user-defined field and I would name it in D7. I'm going to select reference for the purpose of this demonstration. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say extract. Now, what PostTrans will do is say, well, that's not really applicable to this because normally I would just bring in the file, wouldn't I? So let's just say, yes, I do want to open the debtors list for analysis. So what PostTrans is going to do is it's going to scan down, remember the debtors list, and produce a spreadsheet. So now we can see, again, for all the bank accounts and currencies we've listed, our debtors list. So I've told it to match by reference. So what we're going to do here, we're just going to create a little bit of data which simulates what we would have brought in from a CSV file. So let's take, say, these two transactions here. I'm going to copy their reference to the match column. And because we've designated reference, we're looking for those matching references within Sage 200. I'm going to post across the payment. And of course I could part allocate because we've got the tolerance set to anything exact or less. And I'm going to put a reference number here. If I'd set that to exact, then PostTrans would stop importing and say, hey, this value does not agree. If it can't find it, it stops. It says cannot find. Simple as. Let's just go back to a debtors list. So now that was in British pounds. Obviously the receipt has to be in the same currency as the invoice value. Let's just put in two more values. So let's put in those two references. And again, they're matching value. And I don't know, I'm going to type in some references. That would be our CSV data. So how would we import CSV data? Well, all we need to do is move to the first column and row in the spreadsheet, press Setup, go to Import File, and there it says Import the column letter. Well, I could type B in there, but because I've moved the cursor, I'll just press that arrow there, and now that's designated that the CSV file will be imported straight into that section there. I can also add extensions, and I can make it be moved once it's been posted and all sorts of wonderful things there. So let's press, so basically it'll archive the file. And now you can see we've got a file button, in which case we can now browse wherever we've told it to browse, applying whatever filters we've told it to filter. So that would bring in this data from our external system. So let's pretend we've actually brought in that CSV file, and I'm just going to press Import. And what PostTrans is first going to do is it's going to say, well, I read in the debtors list at 1228. Do you want to bring it in again? Well, it's not much time passed, so I'm not too fussed. I don't think it's changed. Well, there's nobody else in the system, so it couldn't have changed. So let's press No. And now what it's done is it's read the first line. And it's saying, well, that's partially allocated, and I'm going to allocate that. So let's press Post. And you can see that's now posted because it's written post across there. It's also written the URN number, the receipt, and the value, but we can't quite see it at present. But if I want to, I can say, oh, don't ask anymore. I'm quite happy, just process the whole file. And there we brought in 4 receipts and allocated them off against their outstanding invoices within Sage 200. And there we can see the URN numbers and the values brought in. So let's have a look at that first allocation in Sage 200. So if I pull up Abby ledger, and let's have a look at the ledger. Let's get them side by side, and I think the first one was 4536, which is down here somewhere. 4536. If we set to session, so we can see there we brought in the allocation. Let's just go to allocation session. Yeah, so we can see there 27022 was the URN number. We allocated 550, which I think was a partial allocation. Yes, it was. And there's the reference number been written against the receipt. So all was good within Sage 200.